everyone, welcome to my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Carrera and today I'm going to be reviewing the TV series The White Queen, which came out in 2013. It consists of 10 episodes. There are two versions of it, and one of them is the extended edition. It's based on 3 novels of the Cousins Wars series by Philippa Gregory: The White Queen, The Red Queen, and The Kingmaker's Daughter. This TV show has a large cast, from the handsome Henry Barnard and Max Irons, to Rebecca Ferguson, Amanda Hill, Faye Marsay, James Frayne, Eleanor Tomlinson, Janet McTeer, David Oakes, among many more. Before I begin, let me just say that this will be a review with some spoilers, so beware. So, The White Queen was my first introduction to the War of the Roses. Even though I'm a history lover, I've never really been that interested in that period of time. But boy, was I missing something. Less than 2 weeks ago, I didn't know what to watch, and I remember The White Queen and I'd never seen it, and it seemed like an interesting show because I love history and I'm an Anglophile, so any period drama set in England will do for me. And I remember that I started watching The White Queen on a Saturday, and by Sunday I had already finished all 10 episodes. I love spoilers, but I decided to go into The White Queen without knowing what was going to happen, and it was just one amazing roller coaster. In 2 weeks since I finished The White Queen, I became in love with Richard III. I'm now a proud Ricardian, and while by now I know that The White Queen is far from historically accurate, I've even rewatched it, and the second time wasn't as good as the first because now I knew where they were going wrong. I just really loved it the first time, and that's the memory that I want to keep on when I think of The White Queen and the message that I want to pass to you all. And while I love the show, I think that I feel the same about it than I do regarding Philippa Gregory's adaptations of her works, meaning that, for example, I love the 2008 version of The Other Boleyn Girl. I haven't watched the one from 2003. And I even went and bought the book, and I also bought the Boleyn Inheritance, but I've never read them because by the first couple of pages, there's something about Philippa Gregory's writing that doesn't appeal to me for some reason. Went on Amazon and read the first pages of The White Queen, and I didn't like it either, so I'm just gonna stick at the moment with the adaptations. Which is odd really, because I know that Philippa Gregory's works are not praised for their historical accuracy, but rather because they show from a woman's point of view what it was like to live in a certain period of history. And I mean, this is just what I love about books, so I guess that the style of writing, that's the problem for me regarding Philippa Gregory's books, not the story itself. But anyways, as I said earlier, I'm now a lover of Richard III, and if I hadn't watched The White Queen, I wouldn't be that now, so I have to thank that show for it, even though by now I know that their portrayal of Richard III isn't very accurate either. The White Queen deals with the life of 3 women during the War of the Roses: Elizabeth Woodville, who is the White Queen, Margaret Beaufort, who is the Red Queen, and the Kingmaker's daughter, Anne Neville. Let me just say that I didn't find the Red Queen, Margaret Beaufort, interesting at all, and I was a bit scared of her at times. She's the mother of Henry VII and grandmother of Henry VIII. Now, I really like Anne Neville after I read The Sun in Splendor, but in The White Queen I didn't really like her that much. I didn't find her interesting, even though she had some admirable qualities. So for me, in The White Queen, Elizabeth Woodville was the more interesting character. I just loved her. I didn't find anything wrong with what she was doing. But it's funny because then afterwards I read The Sun in Splendor, and there she's portrayed as a caricature where she's this evil woman, and it was funny to read that because I hadn't thought that she was evil when I was watching The White Queen. I don't know if that makes sense, but we follow these 3 women through decades of war as they fight for the throne, as they fall in love, as they have children, as they try to protect their families, as they have to stand criticism from the court, from their in-laws, from the people of England. We also follow the stories of their men, and it was just a really entertaining show. I mean, I guess I know why I like it, because for example, I love A Song of Ice and Fire novels written by George R.R. Martin, so this show is kind of like that because A Song of Ice and Fire was inspired in a large portion by the War of the Roses, so the elements were there for me to enjoy The White Queen. Thus, that is why I give The White Queen a 5 out of 5 stars review, because as I have said, it's not historically accurate, but it just captured my attention in a way that a show hadn't done in a long time, and it was really nice to come upon a period of history that I didn't know anything about, and to fall in love with it from the perspective of women. So that's why I give it this rating, not because it's a great production, even though it's really nice, and even though in my rewatched I could pinpoint all that's wrong with it, but I guess that I really enjoy everything about it, from Elizabeth Woodville to Isabel Neville's struggles as she's trying to bring her first child into the world. But as I said, Richard III is the character that appealed to me the most. And it's funny that this is because when I was first watching The White Queen, I was intrigued by his character when he started to show a romantic interest for his niece, Elizabeth of York. And I know a lot more about him, and I don't believe that this was true. I can't forget that that's how I was first captured by this late monarch. And even though I now believe that he had a great love affair with Anne Neville, his wife, in The White Queen, it was really confusing. I just wasn't interested in them. So I wasn't convinced that he loved her, and then I didn't like her that much, so it was weird. And when I was talking about A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones, I enjoyed sort of saying, oh, so this character from those books are based on this historical figure that I'm watching in The White Queen. For example, Edward of Lancaster with Joffrey Baratheon, maybe even Elizabeth Woodville to Cersei Lannister, among many others. And also I like that Elizabeth Woodville, for example, wasn't a protagonist. She was more of an antagonist in a way. And I just found her so refreshing because she was a widow. She was 27 years old. She had 2 sons. And back in the Middle Ages, that wasn't the best situation for a woman to find herself in. And it wasn't the easiest situations either. And yet here we have this woman who was really beautiful, who ends up being Queen of England to a man who's younger than her. And I don't know, I really like that because I hadn't encountered that in history before. For example, I tried to recommend this show to other people, and some of them were like, oh no, I would have preferred if she was 16 and had never been married, and if the king was older than her. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but that we can find that in other stuff. And I thought it was modern in a way to have Elizabeth Woodville represent this sort of woman out there, and how they can have second chances back in the Middle Ages. Even if it was because of her beauty, still managed to have a lot of power and influence in the court, so that was cool. And then also it's really poignant to read what happens to the characters that do end up surviving the White Queen, because I was just so captivated by them and their storylines and what they were through that I needed to know more and get some closure. So this is it for my review of The White Queen. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I should say that there's a sequel of sorts that's going to come out this year called The White Princess, and it deals with Elizabeth of York and her marriage to Henry Tudor, and even though the same actors won't be reprising their roles from the White Queen in The White Princess, I'm still looking forward to watching it and seeing how they portray Elizabeth of York, remembering the man she was infatuated with, her uncle Richard III, and how that affected her marriage with Henry Tudor. In the description box below you can find a link to the IMDb page for The White Queen. Thank you very much for watching my video. I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler. Take care and goodbye.